Hey everyone, this is Tammy with Driven Racing Oil. If you can, stay home, be safe, because I look forward to seeing each and every one of you either at a race or at a show. Much love and see y'all soon.
Hey, it's Freiberger here from Roadkill. I am quarantining pretty hardcore. Staying in my garage, getting some stuff done. I hope you are too. And man, I hope this thing ends soon so we can get back to racing.
Driving directions on your phone? Oh no! That's not fun! Navigate hands-free with Apple CarPlay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Aftermarket Insider presented by Pioneer Car Audio. I'm your host, Joe Sebergandio, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 4. I want to begin by thanking Pioneer. You know, Pioneer is the global leader in car electronics and a proud supporter of automotive enthusiasts everywhere. You know, no matter what you drive, Pioneer has the gear to upgrade your ride and to sound better and to connect with the latest technology like Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and new for 2020, Amazon Alexa. Remember, don't break up with your car, upgrade it. Learn more from our friends at pioneerelectronics.com. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I hope everybody's doing okay. We've got a great show in store for you today. How would you like the opportunity to listen into one of the, well, let's face it, some could say the best automotive builder and one of the biggest draws in the automotive industry, not just the aftermarket, but the industry itself. I'm talking about the guy with one name. When you say Troy, there's only one person you're talking about in this industry, and it's Troy Trepagna from Rad Rides. Troy's got a new show on, Rad Rides by Troy, on Amazon Prime. I had a chance to spend my 99 cents yesterday, and I got to tell you that, look, there's no better way to spend a buck than to watch this show. It's presented by our friends at Mother's Polish, who have always been there to support all things Troy Trepagna related. I enjoyed what they did with that show. It's minus all the drama and BS that you see with some of these quote unquote car shows. There's no fake deadlines. There's no screaming customers. It's just looking back at a guy in a company, in a garage that has been the top of the game, the standard in our industry. And, you know, Troy's not one of those guys that talks a lot. So we're going to find out a little bit more about what's happening with Troy and find out why now did he decide to do the show, because it must have been at least a decade now where whether it's a TV executive or sales guys or show producers and networks that have had to be pounding on his door to do some kind of a quote unquote reality show. But Troy's decided to launch that ship, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Later on in the program, we're going to be joined by a man that I met back in the late 80s. Probably one of the smartest, most direct guys you'll ever run into in this industry. He's the leader of Borla Exhaust, is Alex Borla. Alex Borla, as well as the complete Borla team. I've been familiar with them since they were here in Oxnard, California. They've been out in Tennessee now for well over a dozen years, and they've planted their roots there. We're going to find out why Alex decided to make that move to Tennessee and move out of California, unfortunately, like a lot of other manufacturers in the industry. Why did he do it? What were some of the advantages, and how are things now there in Tennessee 12 years later? Hey, I want to begin by letting you know that things seem to be on an uptick here in California. We're rolling out with a slow opening now where folks may be able to get out and mingle, have an opportunity to maybe enjoy some time at the beach or, man, get a haircut. I'm on my second haircut, and you can see the results. It's tough now. I think we all want to get out. We all want to get out to the car shows, and we all want to get out and see our friends, but we need to maintain some social distancing so we don't find ourselves back at this again at the end of the summer or in October. So we're looking forward to that. A lot of the states have opened up. A lot of folks are getting excited. I was on a conference call this morning with my clients over at Bonnier Events, and they're the producers of the massive Sand Sport Super Show and Off-Road Expo events, in addition to some of the four-wheel jamborees and Street Machine Nationals. Street Machine Nationals, that's an event series that's, I'm sure, one that sparked some memories for Troy Trepagna. But all these events that we were wondering about and wondering as to whether or not they'd actually take place. It looks as if things are changing on the upside. So we'll find out a little bit more about what's happening with events. Also wanted to do a little maintenance. We had a change in our schedule. Brad Gerber, who was originally slated to join us on today's podcast, is still just a little bit away from being able to update us on what's happening with NHRA. Now, we know the folks from NASCAR decided to do their slow rollout, and although there won't be any fans, they'll be returning to racing soon. And we'll find out what's happening with Brad on the 12th. That's next Tuesday, May 12th, right here at 11 a.m. on Facebook Live. If you know any folks that maybe not have had the chance yet to become familiar with the podcast, you can let them know. And before we bring in our first guest, I'd like to thank some of our new subscribers that have liked the Aftermarket Insider. John Hotchkiss, another one of the guys who moved from California down south. I think he's in North Carolina, with Hotchkiss Performance. My good buddy, Mini Bike Paul Wiener, Doug Evans, Ed Tilrock, Alan Reed, Mike Rasecki, Larry Conville, Brian Ferguson, Moose. He was a big help in me securing Troy today, as well as Troy's sister Annette, Brad Fanshaw, Mike Copeland, Ira Gabriel, John Moore, Tom Myronak, our friends over at SEMA, Dan Hobgood, Steve Warner, Rich Robatello, Catherine Reinhart, Fred Gurley, Jim Marino, Bob Swerzik, Chris Thompson, Ted Cardenas, Matt Hay, Russell Stevens, Ashley Teal, Paul Cunliffe, Dan Kahn, Jim and Amy Savas, Brian Reese, Mike Roth, Todd Bundy, Dave Eccles, Chuck Clayton, and a happy belated birthday to Bill Miller over at SEMA. Hey, if I've missed you, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. And finally, an update. Clarence Barnes will return next week with the Barnes Report, and we'll also be bringing in a new segment, which is going to be focusing in on career opportunities and job tips and recommendations for young folks who want to get in this industry. And maybe we'll probe and talk to Troy and Alex and get their inside tips about maybe what they suggest about folks trying to break into the industry. So we've got the Barnes Report coming back in the new segment with Kevin Ostie and Kelly Ostie on career opportunities. Enough with all that. Folks, our first guest is a guy that I mentioned who is by far one of the leading automotive builders in the industry. If you Google Troy Trepagna, you better get a six-pack to relax and take a look at all the stories and the pictures. I remember Troy back in the days of the Street Machine Nationals. And I remember his dad, Jack, rest in peace, pulling up in that white trailer. And it had all these logos on there, Flowmaster and Mothers and a couple others. And, Jack rolls out of the trailer and see this other big guy never had a chance to meet before, affectionately known as Moose, Brian Ferguson. And these guys rolled up out of that rig, and I remember walking up to him and talking to him. And man, I must say that was probably the beginning of one of my best relationships. I light up and lit up always whenever I see Jack, whenever I see Judy, Troy's mom. And then most recently, having had the chance now to spend some time with Troy. Troy, welcome to the podcast. Congratulations on all your success. And how are things over there at Troy's Rad Rides?
So we're in a small community out here, and Chicago got hit pretty hard, but we're doing pretty good. And it's actually been good. We locked the doors and get a lot done. We only see the UPS guy and the FedEx guy. Other than that, we've been working darn near 7 days a week. So it's been good for us.
So all the employees and all the builders and all the shop guys they're coming in and they're working on the cars right now during the virus. Okay.
Yeah, there's only 10 of us, so we're a small group, and we keep most people out of here out of respect to my guys that are working here, and we've been really good. We've had a very few cases in our county, so it's been really good so far, and I think it's definitely on the upswing, like you said. Even Chicago's starting to loosen up a little bit and open things up, and Indiana's only about 25 miles from us to the east, so where I'm at, so they've loosened up a little bit more. So I think it's kind of pressuring Chicago a little bit.
Well, look, we're all hoping for a little bit of relief, Troy, and it's good to hear. How's your mom? How's Judy doing?
Great. She's getting a little tired of being at home, but we get her over she comes by the shop once in a while, and we have her over on the weekends. But she's ready to get out and do some more cross country drives.
Yeah, well, with that said, I'm sure that you're familiar with the adjustment in the schedule for the upcoming Power Tour. I know that you have been a long-standing supporter. Hell, you were on the first Power Tour, the Victory Lap back in the day. I was looking at some of the old photos that you had on the Power Tour with Savis and Angelo and Roy and all the guys. What is your plan for the Power Tour this year now that it's going to be in August?
Well, we're still hopefully, depending on how it works out with Bonneville, Bonneville, if it happens, which I hope it will, there's definitely enough room to social distance out on the salt. So that's been a passion of ours since '07, working with George and the Marianis and everybody going to Bonneville. So, but our plan was on the Power Tour, coming so close to me this year. We're doing a 4-door 61 Chevy wagon for George, just kind of like a survivor car. And me and my mom are actually going to jump on it and do it. So hopefully if it works out late enough in August that we'll get on that and go for a ride. She's kind of been a few years since we've done a cross-country drive, so it's time to do it again.
Are you talking about the Brickwood wagon?
Yes, yeah, the red Brookwood wagon. Yeah, 8,000 mile original car.
Yeah, I saw that, and folks, we'll be alluding to some of the cars and some of the conversation because it's available to you on the new show, A Rad Rise from Troy, available on Amazon Prime right now. I was looking at that, and it's the little things. When I saw the vehicle originally, it's like, it's funny. You see a red wagon, you automatically think about the Mother's Polish 59 wagon, right?
Yeah.
And that's one that's been through your shop 1,000 times. So now you have a matching pair, although a little bit of a different power plant in the Brookwood is planned, huh?
Yeah, it's funny because all the stuff George has, right, and he's gone 400 mile an hour, 50 times in the last, we'll say 5-6 years. The only thing he owns with a turbocharger on it is his new Ford GT. So I had that 66 Blue Belvedere that we built a few years back. I had here and brought him for a ride maybe about 8 months ago, and he came up and that's the one we did the standing mile events with, did Hot Rod Drag Week with it, and runs 960, 150 and a quarter, and went 209 in the standing mile. So I brought him for riding that and kind of lit his eyes up. So when we did this project, I didn't even give him a choice. He didn't. I just told him, hey, we're doing an LSX with a single turbo, so it's time to have something fun to drive like that.
Yeah, well, those wagons, not only do they look great, but for a cruise like the Power Tour, a wagon's just what the doctor ordered, right?
Oh, it's perfect, and it's a 61. My mom and dad did, I think, 5 Power Tours in that white and silver 61 we did for them back in the day. So the year's cool, and it does have a lot of resemblance, obviously, to Mother's 59 that we did for him. So that's what we're gonna. George actually bought the car from Glenn at Billet. He owned it for like 17 years and was never gonna do nothing with it. So George seen it, and we made that purchase. So we're going to patina it a little bit more and maybe try to personalize a little bit more towards what George is all about and racing and stuff. So we're really looking forward to it. And, George, he'll let me use it probably as long as I want. So that's the upside of it.
Without a doubt. One of the good guys in the industry, we're talking about George Petit. Troy, the TV show, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I know from personal experience. In fact, we've even had some conversations before about television opportunities and representation, but why now? What ultimately got you to that place where you're comfortable with letting it happen? Was it Jared, the director, producer behind it, and his sense of where he wanted to take that show that ultimately won you over?
Yeah, Joe, it's, back when this whole TV thing came in the industry, 10, 15 years ago, Jim at Mother's was a big part of it with Bud and them guys. And, Chip did his deal, and then we did our ride shows, and I did a little bit of thing on Discovery with the Blowfish. And then I was slated to do the overhauling shows with Chip. I made it through the first 2, and that was enough. It's too much away from the shop. And at the time, you kind of think you have to choose one or the other. It was taking so much time away from here, building the one-off hand-built cars and getting to work with the customers that we have. And my kids were young, and I was big into my daughter's softball career, and I just didn't want to miss any of that. So I chose to kind of step away from it. And after watching it all and stuff, and we don't do a very good job on our website. We're pretty private here. So we're kind of felt like, it's kind of time to show these people. We have a big following in Australia and stuff. And just to show these people kind of what we're doing a little bit, because we don't keep up on our website. And a lot of our customers are private a little bit that way. So, and with Jared, coming to me with the opportunity, he worked for me for a long time, and he knows the game. And my thing was, we just want to show people how to do things and how serious it is. And it does take a long time, and, you know, la-di-da-di-da. These great customers we have, no drama, nothing staged, no deadlines. So I said, hey, if you can film and put something together with that in mind, you know, it'd be great to do, you know, which is hard because, you know, a lot of people want to see beginning and end in one episode, and it's just unfortunately not the way it happens. So, so we'll see if it works, but, you know, at least it'll give people a little bit of insight of what we're doing here and showing them, because these cars we're doing now, Joe, as you know, they're just everyone's brain surgery. We kind of challenge ourselves farther each time. And then we had another good angle, I thought, Joe, was the Bonneville thing. You know, we become so deep into that. You know, I built obviously the Bullfish years ago, the Mariani Streamliner, Mariani Roadster, worked a lot on Georgia's Streamliner, and then we've got 2 other race cars to build. So we're big into Bonneville, and there's none of that on TV. And that's such a, as you know, an awesome part of hot rodding industry. You know, it was Gray Baskerville, you know, our old buddy's life. And then George drugged me out there, and it's been probably the best thing that we've ever done was the Bonneville thing, because I think we were always known a little bit more for stuff that worked, you know, all them power tours, all the years, you know, driving them, learning, making them better the next time. And that's the customer I have now, the Rydell's and the Mariani's, George, they use their stuff. And the thing I like about Bonneville is you put up or shut up.
Well, you definitely put up. Troy, what was your feeling after you saw the first episode? Were you happy with the first episode?
You know, it was pretty good. It was kind of a little bit of a walk down memory lane. And I know you've seen it. So it was that one shot was good. We had, you know, Baskerville and Brizio, and I think Savas was in there, and I think Posey might even have been in there. But that was
was in there. Angelo Gianpetroni.
Yeah, my old spaghetti, I call him. You know, he was there. I was so lucky, Joe, when I got into this industry in the late 80s, early 90s to, you know, before social media and everything, to when it was all print, you had to go out and beat the streets to get notoriety. You know, you just can't just put it online and everybody sees it. And I was very lucky to get tied in with Boyd and Briz and Chisnall and Angelo and then, you know, especially Gray at Hot Rod, and hooked me up with everybody. It was such a great time. I trailed in with those guys, and it really helped me catapult, I think, into getting a little bit more leg in the industry. And I liked it because it shared some of that, you know, and a lot of people that watched it probably didn't know who a lot of people in were, but the guys that I'm trying to reach in our industry, they knew who they are.
Yeah, you know, there were subtle gauges that folks on the inside knew were good leads. If Gray Baskerville was going to go to an event and he had his eye on a specific car, or he wanted to meet up with a guy or a person, there was something behind that. Gray's dance card was a pretty full book. He was the guy, as you've mentioned many times, when it came to Hot Rod Magazine. And he knew his stuff. He knew it before it was even built. He knew it. He knew probably your career before you did, because he had seen so many of the cars and so many of the people behind him. So yes, Gray, you mentioned Boyd Coddington being an influence of yours as well. You know, Boyd was one of those guys that, you know, he really kind of set the stage for guys like you. You know, he was that guy that stood with his arms folded and his price set that car was $100,000. He took this hobby and really legitimized it to where these vehicles started to command the real big bucks. He was the beginning of the big buck, the big price tag car builds, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the guy, period. You know, I mean, I ran to the magazine stand to get Hot Rod because Gray was hooked up with him out there, obviously both in Southern California. And, you know, I ran to see what he was doing all the time, and then luckily got to meet him. And then I spent quite a bit of time in the early 90s because I was good friends with Chip and, you know, when he was at Boyd's, and we hung out there a lot. And, you know, like I said in the show, Boyd, I'll never forget, you know, Boyd sent us $500 gifts, a savings bond and a bunch of food and stuff when my daughter was born, our first child. And that's just the type of guy he was. You know, a lot of people may have got the wrong impression because Boyd was kind of quiet. And, you know, he was kind of to himself a little bit, and people got the wrong impression, I think some, but he was the guy. I mean, look at Chip's success. I mean, obviously Chip's dad helped like my dad did, but Boyd was a huge influence on both of us, and as definitely me and Chip have had pretty good success so far. And he was a good guy, you know, and Posey too on the East Coast, you know, and Brizio's family, you know, they're just good people. And like I said, just good group of guys.
Yeah, there's no denying that. I actually had a chance to run into not only Roy but Andy at one of the recent Good Guy events last year when we were out there with the SEMA Young Guns. We've been over the last couple of years, I've been working with SEMA Troy out promoting the SEMA Young Guns, which really is focused on getting young enthusiasts to not only continue to be interested in the industry, but to build cars and to be a part of it. And this coronavirus has put a lot of folks kind of in question, wondering about their career and wondering about opportunities going forward. I wanted to personally focus in on job opportunities and tips and tricks, as I talked about earlier in the show. Are there things that you've learned in your experience that you'd be able to pass on to some young enthusiasts who may want to get into building hot rods? Are there any mistakes that you learned from, or any things that folks helped you progress that you could share?
I learned the hard way and everything, Joe, because I always say my dad had the automotive shop here, so I grew up tearing apart junk engines, and my grandfather was a pipe fitter, and he was the guy in our town that if you needed something welded, go see Johnny. So I'd weld pop cans together over there and tear apart junk engines, and we're right on the same property. But I was into sports in school and all that, and out of school I came to work for my dad. So I learned the hard way, like as far as building the cars, because I didn't want to take time to go to school and learn anything. So I had the opportunity enough here that I was able to venture into my own cars there in the beginning and learn the hard way. But I think it was the best way to learn. And we need more young guys, obviously. And I think with this virus thing, probably giving a reality check for everybody, that I think the economy is going to be on fire when it comes back, because everybody's going to be a little more nervous. Like, shit, I got to go out and have some fun and get things done and do what I want. Not what I have to do. I'm going to do what I want. So hopefully obviously you've been to SEMA every year. There's no room for anybody to walk now, so I think it'll only get bigger. But we need the young guys. It really do. I've got another guy, just 25, that I hired that was a McPherson graduate, and has done a great job. Our problem now, Joe, is everything's so challenging here, and we're always so far behind. It's hard to bring in a guy and train him too much, and it's hard to find a young guy that has enough experience. So we try we try guys out for 2 weeks and see how they work, and we've had some good luck, but we're pretty selective now. But we're always, if I had 10 guys show up on a bus right now that were capable of doing it, I'd hire them, because we've got to work. We've got to work and it's good work. It's Wes Rydell, George Poteet, the Marianis, Ross Myers. I always say I've got probably the top 5 customers in the industry. And I'm only doing repeat customer work right now, just because we can't really keep up with just those guys. And we're really lucky,
So before you got on that bus to go apply for a job over at Rad Rides, what are you going to tell any of these young folks that would look for that type of work? What should they be prepared for? What should they have in their toolbox if they're going to come out expecting to get a job at Rad Rides with Troy?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is passion, because I don't care how good you are. Passion and personality. I don't care how good you are. If you don't have the passion to do anything, you're never going to be good at it. And the personality is important in this industry, because, as you know, it's not a 40-hour-a-week industry. So you got to be able to get along with people and blend in well. And then you just got to, a lot of guys, obviously the general skills of welding and some metal shaping and things like that. But, it's funny, Joe, some guys have it and some don't. I don't care how much schooling you go to, but you got to have the key is the passion. I always tell these guys that are opening businesses or young guys trying, always quality is everything. It doesn't have to be some trick over-engineered design. The quality is more important than the design a lot of times, because you can have a really cool design, but if the quality's not there, people look past it. But if it's super simple and the quality's there, people appreciate it and they'll respect that. And you got to build off of that. And then once you start building off of that, you got to have some repetitiveness, right? Like I felt when I started, we'd build a car, go out. Luckily, I met Gray. We did Hot Rod Magazine. Next time I came out, better, and just kept getting better and kept showing up and kept showing up and kept showing up. And then people finally think, oh, you're legit, So that's kind of the road I carved. But passion and personality is the key. And this industry's good. Back 10 years ago, when these young guys were coming from Wildtech, they'd come with their parents and visit the shop, and their parents like, all right, we'll go along with him. He wants to build hot rods. And they're thinking, shit, I'll never make any money. but I'm telling you, this is a big industry, and it's big money industry. My guys, they put the time in. Don't get me wrong, they do very well.
Yes.
And
rightfully so, Troy. And not only do I see and am happy that the wages have gone up with the popularity and the vehicles, but many of these guys are celebrities. I mean, you're gonna find many of those guys in your shop just by the appearances walking by you during the TV show. They're going to be spotted at the SEMA show. They're going to be spotted at the Street Rod Nats. They're going to be spotted in that celebrity part of it. It's a genuine one in the automotive industry because all the quote unquote celebrities are just so approachable.
Yeah,
they don't have handlers. They don't have people. There's not a stanchion between them. Unless maybe you're approaching Freiberger and Finnegan status with Rodeo. But I guess my point is that it's like drag racing. You can go right in there and be next to John Force, getting in his car, or one of the engine guys working on the car. So it's very intimate, and I like that part of it too. You've always been a little bit shy. In fact, you always had an out front guy. Your wingman was always Jack. With Jack being gone now, you got to miss having that out front guy, huh?
Well, Joe, obviously he was the party, and he made it a lot of fun, and he was a good icebreaker for guys I was dealing with in the industry when I was 19, and he was obviously been in business and older, and he was brash. Obviously, if you got through his wall, you're in the right group. So he was a good lead man, good for my customers, and I was glad that he got to spend like the last 15 years of his life working for me and out on the road with us, and I learned a lot. I learned anything that we make work, which is I think what hopefully people see. Look past how pretty it is and all that, know that the stuff works. It came from him. I mean, he could make anything work, but we wouldn't let him touch anything in the shop, anything anybody could see, though, Joe. He wasn't real pretty about it, but he could make anything work. And the TV show thing, that we're doing, it's as important to me that all my guys get equal time on there, and they can develop their own personalities, because I involve my guys at the shop with my customers one-on-one. If I don't even have to be here, my customers can come and deal with my guys. They're very integral. I'm not the guy standing in front saying, look at me, and I've done it all. It's a team effort, but it's very important, the relationship with them. But yeah, it's definitely not as much fun here without my dad anymore. And, but I learned a lot from him, and I got to spend literally probably every day of my life, but I'm going to say probably 50 days I didn't see him. So I'm very lucky in that aspect, because all these young guys move here and work for me. They're leaving their parents behind and everything. So I really respect that. Yeah.
I miss him every time. When I would be at any event, I didn't have to see him, but I would just hear him, Joey, and I loved his direct approach. I remember him one time calling me up. It's like, hey, Joe, we're thinking about this hot August nights. It's like, man, by the time I go there, I'm spending 20, 30 grand. And it's like, well, look, let's call Tony up there at hot August nights and see if we can make something work. And I think you came on and did a couple of PA spots to promote the event.
Yeah.
And before it was all said and done, we got a little help with a hotel room and a little vending space. I think you won $40,000 or $50,000.
Yeah, we won the inaugural show. Yeah.
And, and at the very end, Jack would make a point before he left just to come by and say, thanks. Yeah, you didn't have to go into detail. There was no accounting. There was no tit for tat. But when he said thank you, it made you want to do it, because, hell, anytime I help anybody at Rad Rides by Troy, when you showed up, it made the party. So I always ended up looking like a rock star whenever I was able to get in the middle of anything with you. And that's always been one of the reasons why you've been one of my favorites, Troy. Look, I could go on forever. I know that you've got a lot of stuff going on as well. I wanted to get into the F-87, and I wanted to get into the 41 Chevy and everything else that you're doing there. But maybe we can find another time to do that, Troy, because I'd love to have you come back on the podcast and maybe update folks about what's happening with you. Where can folks find out more about Rad Rides by Troy? And if you could, give folks just a little bit more information about how they can get to the upcoming episodes of Rad Rides by Troy TV show.
Well, we got radrides.com, obviously, and then the show is on Amazon, and it's Finding Fast, Rad Rides by Troy, and it's on Prime. So I think the second one should be out any day now, and it'll be start gearing a little bit more towards the cars and stuff. But I want to say, Joe, my dad always really enjoyed working with you, and we appreciate everything that you've always done for us. And like we talked a couple years ago at SEMA, I'm getting closer, hopefully, to making step where we could actually work more together. And I often wonder how much further I'd probably be if my old man was still here.
Well, look, I'm sure Jack's looking down at both of us right now and pretty happy with what we're doing. You probably a little bit more, and rightfully so. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on. Once again, thanks to your sister and to Moose for helping secure your time. All the best to you, Troy. And for those of you listening in, it's Troy Trepagna, or there's only one word in the industry to describe him. It's Troy. Troy, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Aftermarket Insider.
Anytime, Joe. Thank you. The best is yet to come, baby.
For sure, brother. For sure. Well, there you have it, folks. Probably a case to be made for the best automobile designer that we've ever seen. And I look forward to seeing some more of his vehicles. You've got to check out that third-gen Camaro that he's working on. I think the only original parts on that vehicle are the A-pillar and some of the original glass. The 41 Chevy, everything's been literally built in-house. So what they're doing there is amazing. I want to again thank everybody for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Our next podcast is the 12th of May. And I believe we're going to have on Brad Gerber from NHRA. I've been chasing Brad around for a little while, and he's just about ready. The next guest on our podcast is a gentleman that when you think about exhaust, one of the premier names in exhaust, especially when you talk about high-end quality exhaust, it's Borla Exhaust. There's a family behind that company, and I think it has a lot to do with their success. It's Alex, it's Elise, it's David and the family, and even their employees are like family. Marion's a good example of that. I had an opportunity to work with Borla Exhaust back in the 80s when I was slinging ads in Hot Rod, and I worked on the West Coast, and Borla was out in the West Coast, and they were a potential client of ours and had heard a lot of good things about them and had a chance to visit Borla Exhaust a time or two and was very anxious to earn their business as an advertiser with our magazines because we thought for sure we could help them move the needle. And, you know, Alex is, and Elise and David, they're very smart when it comes to business. They're very patient and they're very thoughtful about what they did. And they took their time before they decided to advertise, and they took their time before they selected their partners. And fortunately, we made the cut, and the rest has been pretty much history. I'd like to go on a little bit more about exhaust, but why should I be talking when I can have the king of exhaust join us? How about a nice Aftermarket Insider welcome, Alex Borla from Borla Exhaust. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Joe, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity of having me.
Yes, I'm wondering, how are things in Tennessee? It looks like you found a nice home there after 12 years. What's a day in a life like for you out there now in the midst of this coronavirus?
Well, I tell you, it's been 12 years since we moved here, and there wasn't one moment that we regretted the move. It's a very special place. I think the South in general is a very special place. And what makes this place unusual for me is the actual people that are here.
What is it about them? I've experienced a little bit of that feeling when I go back. I've been to Memphis a time or two. I've been out to Brentwood to see Joe St. Lawrence at RTM a time or two. And I just remember the beauty of it. And I love the pace, which was a little bit different than the pace out here in California, in addition to the people too, Alex, you know?
Joe, it's more than the pace, and, you know, it's got a reputation of being slow, and it really isn't. It's really the depth and the wholeness of the people, that they're extremely inclusive. You know, I came here out of nowhere, you know, having spent, you know, my childhood in New York, which made me a Yankee, and California is not regarded as being anything other than. And I was really, really concerned about, to the degree that I'm going to be accepted here and I'm going to be somewhat of an outcast. And I tell you, I made some incredible friends, okay? And the people are just absolutely incredible.
That's good to hear. And I think that you probably add a little skip to the step back there too. You bring a certain personality, and obviously you've brought the business there. What was the main reason, when you look back, Alex, that you decided to get out of California and move south? Was it business? Was it just you're at that place in your life where you wanted to change? What caused the change or the move?
Joe, you know, most people are really, I think, they're a little harsh on California. I've never really left California because I had any issues in California. I think California was very good to us. We moved there in the early 80s. The employees that we had in California were first class. They were some of the most hardworking people we ever had work for us. We really didn't start having any issues in California until after we left, but we still have a small presence there. And, we have an R&D facility, and we maintained, some of the brain trust that we developed over, 30 or 40 years. And, we have people with us that have been with us for over 30 years.
I mentioned Marion earlier. For some reason, I see Marion, and it just reminds me of seeing another Borla family member. Is Marion still helping you in California and in Tennessee, or where is he?
Marion moved to Tennessee, moved his family to Tennessee. He had 2 growing children, and he's never looked back. And he's still Marion. He's still his own person. He still does whatever he wants to do. But, he's got a ball of heart, and he looks out for the company, and he's done incredible for us.
I just remember him because, let's face it, you had a company to run, and Elise was running the front, and David's doing his stuff. But whenever I got there, whether it was for a project vehicle that you were helping us with, or even my personal vehicle, I remember I had that 85 Monte Carlo with the 468 Rat motor, and everything on it was different. And it's like, Marion, help. It's like, just bring the car up. Bring the car up. Call us tomorrow. And it was like that all the time. It's like, just drop off the car.
It's still pretty much the same.
Yeah, well, and that's always been one of those things that continues to, I think, has always made me comfortable and looking forward to working with you. Alex, what was it? How did you get into exhaust? I mean, such an interesting segment, such a competitive segment. Where was the passion for exhaust? Where did all that start with you?
Well, you got to go back a little bit, and I hope you got a couple of days because this will take a few days. But at the end of the day, and I think Troy really alluded to it, and so did you. And I think that's probably at the nucleus of all our conversation is that what we all share together is passion. We have a passion for the industry. Okay, we were kids when we got into this business.
Right.
Nobody knew what fuel injection was when we got into this business. Okay, so it tells you how far cars have come along. All right. And one of the things we all share is the passion. So, I've had a passion for cars from the time that I was 11 or 12 years old. Okay. That hasn't changed. And I consider myself to be one of the most fortunate human beings that I can make a living at something that I really love to do. And I had a very strict father who used to remind me with regularity that if you're doing something that you like to do, you're not working. But I really, really like what I'm doing. And, by the time I got into the exhaust business, I already had a couple of businesses. Okay. And I learned the things that I liked and the things I didn't like in business. And one of the things I didn't like was retail. I just didn't like retail. I'm personally enough like people. For whatever reason, retail wasn't attractive to me.
What was it about it that you didn't like? What was it?
I honestly don't know. And I think part of it was probably that I'm not a very regimented person. And in retail, you have to be very regimented. You have to be there at a certain time. You have to be open at a certain time. You have to put up and have the patience for the clients. And it's just the management of it all, and the babysitting that it takes.
Sure, I could see that. Yeah.
I just didn't have the patience for it.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I decided one day, look, I want to be in a business where it doesn't matter where I am. Doesn't matter where I live. As long as the UPS truck can find my door, I can make a living. And about the only thing you can do that in is manufacturing. So then I looked at all, what am I going to make? It's going to be something to do with cars, obviously. I didn't know anything else. And I started looking at all the components, and they're all, kind of risky components. You make brakes, somebody will run off the road, they'll sue you. You're making pistons, some guy puts it in backwards, you get it back, So you had all these different issues with different complexities of these parts. And I said, what? Let's make exhaust systems.
Smart.
And I was, if a muffler falls off, you give the guy another one. I mean, what's the best thing that could happen with it, And I was fortunate that I had a friend when I had my car dealership, they used to bring me parts because I used to deal with exotic cars. And the Rolls Royces were very, very expensive to get components for. He used to bring me exhaust systems out of England. And, when we got out of the dealership, I hooked up with him and we started importing exhaust systems out of England for Rolls Royces. And eventually he decided to move to California and left me alone. So I said, you know what, I'll make this stuff. So we started manufacturing exhausts. So that's how we got into it.
And where was that in California?
was not in California, it was in New York.
Oh, it was in New York. Whereabouts?
Yeah. Springfield Gardens,
Okay.
New York. Then we eventually moved to Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
Okay.
And then we were in Greenpoint, Brooklyn for about 5 or 6 years. And in 1982, we moved to California.
And were you, when you were in Brooklyn, was it Borla Exhaust at the time? Was it his?
Yeah, it was Borla Performance Industries, and Elise came on board and she kind of helped me start the company and she shaped it, basically. She basically shaped the look and the feel and
that worked out okay, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I would put them up on a cardboard box and take a picture of it and try to make an ad out of it, And she said, "No, that's not going to work." I mean, she came out of Max Factor, so lipstick and all the other stuff. So she went out and found some place, and she rented a place I never ever heard of. It was called a Cove, a photo cove.
Sure.
What's a photo cove? I never knew what the thing was. Okay, and she took a bunch of parts. And she came back in the evening. I said, "How much was this?" It was $800. I said, "Our rent isn't $800." What do you mean you blew $800 in a day?
Investment spending, Alex, right?
But you know what? It got us where we are.
Sure. And for those of you who know Elise, and I'm sure many of you do, and for those of you who don't, Elise would not only want to make sure that she picked the car that the unit's going to be photographed on, but the color, the backdrop, other options, what's one step better, what's one step lower. I mean, she would evaluate it, I'm sure, entirely. And that's, I got to admit, Elise taught me a lot just from the times I went out to make a sales call to Borla Exhaust. And to your point, she had a business acumen that is very unique and very obvious. And how nice, because candidly, Alex, as times continued on and you became much more successful, she was my primary point of contact. I would see you maybe on the way in or way out, but she was the marketing voice and leader. And man, she knew her stuff. We dealt with a lot of quote unquote media buyers that she could run circles around. And I've always admired her and respected her for not only being a great gal, but also being a very, very smart businesswoman.
You should have met her dad. I mean, he was the ultimate negotiator.
Well, there you go, right? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Absolutely.
Look at David. I see so much of you in David.
She and I had a great partnership because, I could mind the store and make sure that we made the right products, that we made the best products that we possibly could. I was quite experienced by that time on a technical side of things. And, she took over the public relations and the advertising. And then David came along, about 15 or 18 years ago, and he's got a degree in marketing. And to add to that, David also has a degree in sound and sound engineering because he went to school in Rochester, New York, and then in NYU, and he's got a degree in music. All right. So, it's interesting how things confluate when you get together with things, and he's got an ear that is second to none.
Yeah.
Okay. He knows the sound that people really, really want and expect out of these vehicles. Okay. And he's unrelenting. He will not allow us to put something on the market that he personally has not driven and approved.
Well, you mentioned David having an ear. Understatement. David Borla is a professional musician. If you have not had the chance to hear of a group called Danger Man, in fact, they covered a song from a bluesman, Fred McDowell. That I'm a blues guy myself, and when I heard Danger Man, David's video for the first time, and I heard that song by Fred McDowell, I had to call your son up and have a little bit of a go. But Danger Man was one of the only other band that was signed by Michael Jackson's booking agents, just to give you a little bit of a sense. So when you say David's got a good ear, and I know how important it was for him to have those sound clips, when you go to the website, if you want to hear what the Borla exhaust sounds like on your new Corvette, you can click a button and you can hear it. You want to hear it on a new Silverado, you can click that button. So that whole talent and that use of that talent to make it work for the business that's an interesting insight on that. Not surprised at all. Alex, one of the things that has been a topic of late has been some of the challenges that our industry has had to deal with. And it comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. Right now, everybody's dealing with this current coronavirus and their ability to not have people in building parts, not have people out at events selling parts. What's been keeping you up at night as we go through some of these current situations in the world, not only with business, but also in our personal lives?
Well, the coronavirus is on a downslope. We're basically getting past it. We were fortunate enough that we were able to maintain the operations of our company and were able to maintain everybody employed. You know, obviously business wasn't what it's supposed to be, but we also have some military contracts and we support some other trucking industries that were essential. So we were basically asked to stay open.
Okay, that's good.
And I think the coronavirus is going to go away. And to your point, I think to Troy's point, it's going to be an exceptional fourth quarter, and next year is going to just absolutely explode. Okay, so everybody, you know, including us, is looking forward to that event, you know, and be making sure that we have the right people and we take advantage of the fact that there might be some people available that ordinarily are not.
Very true.
Try to hire them. You know, we try to get ourselves, positioned. But as much as this president is really trying to deregulate almost everything, because as a businessman, you don't like regulations. I mean, neither do I, and neither do you. Right. But be it as it may, there's a lot of vestigial stuff that's been left over from, many, many years of legislation. And the EPA has become very, very problematic to the industry.
What's happening, Alex?
Well, historically, we were all concerned about the CARB, and SEMA has done an incredible job in creating a relationship with CARB. And CARB has done an incredible job in really very carefully educating the SEMA members of exactly what the requirements were, the things that they accepted, the things that they didn't, and the things that we could or couldn't do. So it gave us guidelines. As long as we stayed in those boundary conditions and we made sure that we followed all their requirements, we were safe. So we could get up in the morning and make parts, and those were the boundary conditions that we did. EPA was nowhere to be found. Okay, they weren't anywhere. Okay, so they've written some rules 40 years ago. Everybody basically understood what the rules were. They were never really that interested in enforcing any of their laws because they were busy with the OEs and they had much bigger fish to fry. Okay, well now they ran out of things to do, so now they're attacking our industry.
Tuning shops,
everybody.
Exhaust.
They came walking into our facility unannounced. Okay, advised us that we are making headers, and that's illegal. Okay, and our response to them was, okay, we'll stop. Okay, headers were not a big portion of our business anyway, and we didn't want to pick a fight with them. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the IRS, right? I mean, it's not like.
Yeah, and their retort was that it gave us a $3 million fine. Okay, and we're fighting them, and we're going to fight them, and be a little more active legislatively, and be a little more active on the Hill if this coronavirus wasn't as prevalent, and if the legislators weren't as busy with it. Okay.
Sure.
But they basically decided to reinterpret their rules. Okay, they didn't change the rules; they just reinterpreted it. Okay. And I really think this should be a warning to everybody in the industry, because it's not a matter of if they're going to walk into your place, it's a matter of when. Okay. And they're like, I'm from the IRS, I'm here to help you. Okay. they are one of the most aggressive, unreasonable, okay.
Yeah, their way or the highway.
Individuals I've ever dealt with.
Yeah.
Okay. It's incredible. So that concerns me a little bit, because it concerns the future of the industry.
And what's essentially the deal, that we're gonna fine you, leading to closing your business, or we're gonna get into your wallet? I was looking back in some of the bigger players in the industry. You look at MagnaFlow having to pay $650,000, Flowmaster punching a check for $270,000. These are guys selling anywhere from 400 units to 5,500 units. And then you got smaller companies, Jammo Performance Exhaust, Apex Exhaust. These are small companies paying a fraction of the fines, $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, but it's putting some of those small businesses out of business. where although the fines may not be as high as some of the bigger companies, they can't cope. So there's definitely got to be
Joe, it's a fundraiser. It's a fundraiser for the EPA.
Okay.
It is absolutely, it has nothing to do with the environment. Okay, you got a minute?
Yeah, and it's a fraction of the cars that could conceivably be affected, right?
Even that. I mean, let's take a car. Let's take the life of a car is 300,000 miles today, right? By the time it gets down to the bottom.
Okay, sure.
So let's take a car that is mid-age, let's say at 150,000 miles. Okay, you're going to take that car off the road. You're going to turn it into a race car, right? You're going to take all the emission control devices, throw them all away. You're going to take the springs out, wheels out, whatever you're going to do to it, make it a race car. How many miles would that car see in its life?
Once you made it a race car?
Yeah.
Nowhere near as much as it's going to be on the road, right?
It's going to see miles a quarter mile at a time.
Yeah.
It's going to sit in someone's garage at least 50 weeks out of the year. Okay. So on the end of the day, you improve the environment, because if that car would have stayed on the road for the last 150,000 miles, would have polluted considerably more, okay, than it's going to do sitting in a garage someplace, okay, and being raced for 2 weeks out of the year.
Sure.
Okay. Absolutely. All right. It's nothing to do with the environment. All right. It absolutely is a fundraiser for the EPA.
So how do you get support outside of, like, the SEMA RPM Act has been something that's been going on for a while, recognizing the protection of motorsports, the RPM Act. You can find out more about that at SEMA.org. Are you happy with what they're doing for you? Are there some things that the RPM Act is doing that you are supportive of? Are there things that they could be doing that maybe aren't happening now?
I don't think SEMA can solve all of our problems, and I don't think we should expect them to. Okay. SEMA will do what it needs to do, okay, and they're going to do a fantastic job. But I think for all of us who can, we need to also fight parallel. This has to be a multi-front, basically, attempt to defeat them. You cannot just put all your eggs in one basket with SEMA.
What do you recommend, Alex?
Well, I recommend this basically to go to DC and knock on the doors of the legislators. Okay, and get some solicitation on the Hill, because if a senator or a congressman or a group of senators, congressmen starts inviting in some of the EPA members to answer some questions of why they're trying to put these companies out of business, okay, I think that would change the playing field dramatically. Okay, the problem is that until now, they're not accountable to anybody. They have all the power in the world. Okay, if you follow their own rules and regulations, and we go through this, and we got to go through this by basically, we're gonna fight them, and they'll fight us. We'll wind up in an administrative court. That administrative judge is one of them. Okay, there's really no opportunity or possibility, okay, for a private company to fight successfully against an administrative arm of the government. Okay, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. You mentioned that maybe having to modify some of your product line to avoid some of the issues with EPA. Was there a big setback when you eliminated the header portion of the line?
It hurt us from a PR perspective. It hurt us. Okay. As far as the revenue base itself, we're fairly well diversified.
Yes.
So that in itself was not a major issue. But headers are probably one of the most pronounced and one of the most predominant components in performance. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah. Well, there was so much talk about the popularity of the catback systems when there's the time with the sport truck market where a catback system and a K&N air filter and drop spindles was your version of aftermarket modifications. But we're in a whole different world now. You can go buy a choice of Camaros or Mustangs that are 6, 7, or 800,000 horsepower. A lot of them come with exhaust, but exhaust is one of those things that everybody wants their own individual system. Everybody wants it to be specific to their car. Alex, how is it that you got the esteemed reputation of being such a high-end quality product? Because as I kind of conclude the podcast, that's how I leave thinking about Borla. That it's like the best that you can get. How are you able to do that?
Joe, the first muffler I ever made was made out of stainless steel, and I was selling it for $39 when you go into Midas and buy a muffler for $3.
Not an easy task.
No. Okay. But people, to your point a little earlier, and to Troy's point, Troy made an extremely good point. Quality is it. There's so much junk floating around the environment.
Yep.
Okay. That people appreciate quality. They're willing to pay for quality. And when you get something of quality, you get value because you get to use it. If you buy junk cheap and you have problems with it, you'll remember for the rest of your life. If you overpaid for something, you got a great product. I'm not telling you our products are overpriced, okay? You'll get the life and the use out of the product for the rest of your life without any problems.
When I sold my pickup truck, one of my selling points is it had a Borla exhaust, a removable sectionalized Borla exhaust. The guy who bought it was a former editor of, it was Rich Boyd.
Yeah.
It closed them. It wasn't the center line wheels. It wasn't the snug top. It wasn't the audio system or the Boyd steering wheel, the Borla exhaust. Alex, look, I wanted to touch on a couple things, but time has kind of got the better part of us. Particularly wanted to just go back a little bit about your relationships with guys that I know and loved and worked with as well over the years, John Diana and Ralph Panico, just to name a couple. As we kind of conclude the podcast, any parting comments about either one of those guys, John Diana or Ralph Panico?
Well, interesting enough, in the opening of your podcast, you used the word shocking. Guess where that came from?
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That was Johnny, right?
Sure.
That was 100%, and Panico. I mean, look, when you and Troy were going down memory lane, I had tears in my eyes. Because many of those people that we grew up with as kids, who really were our proteges and promoters and helpers, are no longer with us.
I know it.
You know, Johnny and I were neighbors.
I certainly do. I know you.
Okay,
you guys
so
had-
we used to see an awful lot of each other.
Yeah.
Okay, and I remember Johnny when he was on that dance thing when he was a kid.
Yep.
I forgot the name of the TV show, but
With his
So-
wild bell bottoms and his band.
yeah, and
his
he was
big
dressed
side-
like $1 million, But we were all kids, and I look at each other and we still look like kids, But it's been a few days.
It's been a few days. It's been a few days, a few weeks, and a few months. Like, you wear it well, Alex. You haven't changed. You've always treated me, even when you probably didn't even have to, with a lot of respect, and you've always made me welcome. I take pride when I walk up to your booth at SEMA and you've got that 2-tiered awesome display, and there's like a wait line for people to get in, and you're booked constantly, and then all I gotta do is walk by and wave to you, and you stop whoever you're talking to or stop whatever your meeting you're in, and you'll say hi to me. And that means a lot to me. I appreciated all the respect and all the business and support you've given me over all these years, and I thank you for that.
Joe, can I ask you a question? With a name like Joe Sabraganda, do you think anybody would not dare respect you?
Some of those are just stereotypes. I'm a lover, not a fighter. You know that, Alex. Do me a favor. Give Elise a hug for me. Have fun with those grandkids. Say hi to David. I hope that I see you this summer, Alex, and I'm hoping for sure that I get to see you in Las Vegas for the SEMA show as well.
Joe, I'm sure this is the most we spoke to each other in years, but I love you, and I can't wait to see you.
Thank you, Alex. Folks, there you have it. Alex Borla, the man behind Borla Exhaust, one of the nice guys in our industries. This EPA issue, which is affecting a lot of manufacturers in the industry, is something that's serious. It is taxing in a variety of ways. If you would like to join in and help to maybe shine a different light on what this EPA measure has caused grief-wise with our clients, support it. Go to your local Senate, go to your local officials. And if you need a little bit of help or some insight, talk to Alex Borla at Borla Exhaust. I want to thank Troy Trepagna for joining us on the podcast as well. Check out Troy's new television show on Amazon Prime. Our next podcast is May 12th, and we'll be joined hopefully by Brad Gerber, the head guy over at NHRA. We'll find out a little bit more about what's happening there. And I've got a couple other folks that I'm working on. Let the cat out of the bag. I'm dying to get a hold of Dave McClellan to see if I can get Dave to join us on the podcast. Hey, this is it. It's the Aftermarket Insider, Season 1, Episode 4. That's a wrap, presented by Pioneer Car Electronics. Don't forget, folks, don't break up with your car. Get a new Pioneer system. Crank up the tunes. I'm Joe Sombrigani. I'm your host. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. We'll see you the next time on the Aftermarket Insider.